This is part one of creating quite possibly my favorite portrait of the year so far. There was very little plan ahead of time before starting this process, and I think that often creates the best art, to be honest. It allows me to experiment and play almost without much pressure because I'm not trying to get a specific outcome. And using acrylic ink is the best at this stage because they're so unpredictable and free flowing, and they end up creating these really beautiful abstract marks that I let poke through at the end of the portrait. And once I'm happy with the abstract background, I like to sit back while it dries and start to envision in my mind's eye shapes popping forward from the different marks that I've made, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like how if you were watching clouds in the sky, you'd start to see them forming certain shapes or looking like certain objects. I think I've trained myself to kind of see the different ink blots and marks in the same way. But this is definitely something I've gotten a lot better at with practice. I think your imagination is like a muscle you need to exercise, and we don't get to do a lot of that in our adult lives. If I can really tap into flow state, it starts to feel like the painting is just creating itself. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's true. It starts to feel like I'm just a steward with the paintbrush and it's just unfolding the way that it chooses. And a lot of this is just trusting my instincts and intuition. I've made so much art over the years that I'm not scared to make mistakes anymore. And I know that oftentimes the mistakes actually end up being the most beautiful part of the piece. So I let myself get really lost in this creative process, and you can tell in the results. I think she turned out incredible. But you'll have to follow along for part two, where I add the final touches because I do think that's where the magic lies. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for part two.